I was really depressed from everything that was happening, and I didn't want to speak because I was bullied for the way I spoke, and that day changed the rest of my life. I had a following already of a few 100,000 people, so I decided I'm just gonna make 1-minute videos about their stories.
I actually wrote a story during college about the effects of people's belief in God.
When the war started, I was at Columbia on the campus, and I was listening to what people were talking about. I want to go find these communities, and I want to make videos about their history and their culture, and I want to share this with the world.
We know how many people died, but how many people's lives have been changed by COVID in the long term, and I know now we don't think about it as much. I'm so glad you came.
I'm so glad
this is so exciting. Hey everybody, I'm the Unsigned on Wall Street here from the balcony on the New York Stock Exchange. I brought you everything in food, finance, fashion, and fun. You know what? This is all about the humanist story. How can humans change this world? How can we, one person at a time, empower or change the future of other people in a big way? And so for me, that's the most exciting thing. Yeah, do I love finance? Yeah. Do I love trading? Yes. Investment, all that kind of stuff is really fun. Do I like technology? Not so much. Do I love food and fashion? Absolutely. And I brought you some of the coolest stories ever. But at the end of the day, the humanist story, what makes somebody unique, right? Somebody who's really sort of broken ceilings and has taken on the world, you know, one day at a time, one person at a time, to kind of change the trajectory of not only their lives, but the world in so many ways. And so today I'm bringing you Aija Mayrock, who I saw on Instagram years ago. She was doing something that obviously is something that I hold dear in my heart, which was she was actually feeding Holocaust survivors on Shabbos. She was bringing food to them on every Friday and sitting down with them and getting to hear their story. And so I haven't mentioned this that much on this channel at all, but my parents are Holocaust survivors, and they lived into their late 90s. Obviously, they came from Eastern Europe. They had extraordinary childhoods. Then obviously the war broke out. They had 4 years of hell and lost everybody in their family. And then they came to America. They found the American dream. They fell in love at first sight. It was a great story, a wonderful story. And they lived into their 90s, and they were successful, and they had me and my brother and all that kind of stuff. So their story was an amazing story of resilience and spiritual awareness and kindness and all that kind of great stuff, and a real humanist story. My father, as a physician, really sort of approached medicine in a sort of humanist fashion. However, at the end of the day, as people get older and as their people around them pass away, they're kind of left alone, and very often not as many of Holocaust survivors have been as successful as my parents were. And so their story is not as ideal, right? And maybe they did not have children who were able there to take care of them. So Aija's story is extraordinary. And that was just the beginning. That was just the tip of the iceberg of the story that she'll go on to tell you. So I'm super excited to have you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
That was a great intro.
Thank you. Intros are my specialty.
I can tell.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about you at 15. Give me a little background.
Me at 15.
Tell me of how you got to where you are.
Okay, so me at 15, I was in high school and I was being brutally bullied. I used to have a lisp and a stutter and learning disabilities, and so I would come to school every day and my classmates would tell me to kill myself every single day for years.
Where'd you grow up?
In New York, and then my family moved to California.
Okay.
And this went on for years. I really struggled with what is my purpose? Why am I alive?
Right.
I was really depressed from everything that was happening. Right. And I didn't want to speak because I was bullied for the way I spoke. Right. But I found writing as a way to express myself. And I found that the written word for me was the place that I found meaning. It was my outlet. And so I wound up writing 2 books that became bestsellers by the time I was 24.
No, amazing. On the struggle or about?
My first book was about bullying. My second one was not.
Okay.
And then I started creating content. And I make videos about the most interesting places in the world, the most interesting people, and the most interesting companies.
Right.
And that's what I do.
So you know what? Look, so the Holocaust story was just something that became one of your pet projects, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is there a relationship to that? Are your grandparents are survivors?
No,
or?
actually.
No,
so I mean, my grandparents and my great grandparents came here as refugees.
Okay.
But they were not survivors. But during COVID, I was reckoning with my own identity as a Jewish person and not really feeling connected to my own heritage and a lot of the anti-Semitism that was happening in the world. And I heard of this opportunity to bring food to Holocaust survivors that live below the poverty line in New York. And I was like, there are Holocaust survivors that live in poverty?
I also thought it was, I couldn't believe it as well, but there are.
Exactly.
Yes, there are.
And so I signed up and I brought 10 bags of food to these survivors and I sat and I listened to their stories. Right. And that changed the rest of my life.
Of course.
And then I kept doing it over and over. And after 3 years of doing it, I realized I have heard these stories. They are so unbelievable. The resilience, I've never seen anything like this. Yeah. but no one knows these stories.
Yeah.
And I had a following already of a few 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So I decided I'm just going to make 1-minute videos about their stories. And then those videos, went viral and obviously brought me to you.
Yeah, good, amazing. Those stories, we could talk about that separately in the whole thing, because it is obviously, it's a story that needs to be told. You would not think it. I mean, even me being a child, I'm a child of survivors, so it's not, it's close to the relationship. My both parents had numbers on their arm, and they, I grew up hearing those stories of what they went through and their resilience and their lives, and how it had gone from being an incredible upbringing, in Eastern Europe and a wonderful life to obviously, hell on earth, and then how they were able to turn that around, because as I'm sure you've heard, many people came here as refugees, and were carrying with them a lot of pain and a lot of struggle, and and a lot of victim. Right, and not everybody came here and found the love of their lives and were able to find success and live out their American dream. Very many struggled.
Yes.
Depending on what, I actually wrote a story during college about the effects of people's belief in God before and after the Holocaust. About those who had been very religious before the war and who had actually abandoned religiousness after they realized. I mean, my parents, who came from fairly religious, a couple of generations back, were religious, but they just, as they watched what was going on to them, they could not really believe in God, a God of goodwill and justice having what happened to them, because it made no sense. And so they kind of they abandoned it and sort of adopted more of a traditional background. But the fact is that very many people came out so scarred and so damaged that they were not able to find their dream and not able to start a family and whatnot. So that is an amazing story. But I'm more interested in, yes, that's obviously something that I would love to talk to you about, because it's so powerful, and it's a story that needs to be told for nothing more than, if we don't acknowledge what humanity is capable or inhumanity is capable of, then we are doomed to relive it, and we are 100%. Seeing that unfold in our lives right now, right, 100%. In a big way. So that's powerful. But what I loved about you was the fact that sort of catapulted you into this need to hear other people's experience, right? I mean, that's kind of like hope. HOP is hear other people's experience. It's an interesting way to really sort of grow and to share. Look, the more I know about what other people are capable of, and whether it's look, you interviewed amazing companies, right? I mean, what I find when I interview people about companies is the ingenuity and what people are capable of thinking about it. So you did the guy who made the helmet that grew hair. Obviously, that was something that was close to my heart, even though I have no problem being bald. I got plenty of hair, so I didn't need that one, except a little off the top. But there are other companies, for me, and you've traveled the world. Another thing that you did, which probably pivoted from the Holocaust story, was the fact that you went out in search of the the disappearing Jewish communities all over the world. Tell me about that experience.
So, I mean, I had a following of a few 100,000 people, and no one knew I was Jewish, and I didn't talk about anything about being Jewish. And then as anti-Semitism, got worse and worse, and I was doing this delivery to survivors, I started sharing their stories and seeing the amount of ignorance and just lack of education when it came to the Holocaust and things like that. Right. And then when the war started, I was at Columbia on the campus, and I was listening to what people were talking about. And I realized that a lot of people, had certain beliefs because they didn't understand how diverse the Jewish people were. Right. That we were all not, white from Europe, and so I decided, I want to go find these communities, and I want to make videos about their history and their culture, and I want to share this with the world. And so I made this series called Jews Around the World, where I go to different Jewish communities all over. And my first one was Tunisia, and then I went to Azerbaijan, and then I went to Colombia, and then Mauritius, and all these places, with the goal of saying, this is a very diverse people with a very unique and
this could
shared
be the
history.
farthest thing from you would imagine is if you'll find a Jewish, like where could you go that you couldn't find a Jewish person, and you found one?
And why are they? Why is this community there? What have they gone through, and how are we all connected?
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was extraordinary. And what parts of it seem to say? I mean, obviously it's amazing. They can be speaking another language, have different traditions, yet there are certain traditions that are very similar.
All the same.
Right, they're all the same,
all the
which is amazing.
I went to this community in Tunisia, this island called Jerba. They've been there for 3,000 years. They've never left this island.
Right.
And these people are the same as my family and probably your family. Of course, we speak different languages, we look different, but we're the same. And and that was the goal with the series, and thankfully
we
it's done
celebrate
really well.
holidays the same. Obviously, our eating, what we eat is different, obviously,
Exactly.
but there are certain traditions that are the same.
Exactly.
Okay. So 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 then you went on to what about the companies that you've interviewed, founders,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So that's exciting. You know,
Yeah.
you don't want just you want to know who was the person who was sitting in that garage, like we always think of Apple, and came
Yeah.
up with that. What was that aha moment?
Yeah.
So give me a little bit description of those and how exciting they were.
So I love talking to really interesting founders and the most interesting companies. And so I did a video on Neko Health, which is a Spotify founder's new company that is a very affordable and comprehensive full body scan that hopefully will change the future of healthcare.
And it's actually apparently looking to actually go public as a company. Is
Really?
my understanding.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So it was in England, wasn't it?
Yes,
Where did
and
you
they're
went to
launching
Neko?
here next.
Right. So there's another one here. There's one called Prenuva in New
Prenuvo,
York.
yes.
Right, Prenuvo, right.
Yeah.
Which is, look, at the end of the day, health is something that I really hold dear to my heart. I had a really terrible COVID experience where I almost died, and I went through all of this stuff. I was in a neck brace for 4.5 years, and then unfortunately my wife got cancer and passed away as well. So for me, health has been a big thing to understand, and I grew up with my father, who is a doctor and a well-known doctor, but was very obviously bound in Western medicine, and how I saw how that level of healthcare in our system really fell short, right, in so many ways. I'm a big proponent of a lot of the new biohack, anti-aging and longevity thing. That's one thing. But what you're talking about is, so the what's it called?
Neko Health.
Neko Health is basically going in. So what I found with my wife was she ended up having a cancer that we were able to deal with originally, and then it came back. And then once it comes back, it tends to be a little bit harder to get a handle on. And we watched it spread throughout her body. And that the Western medicine does not really try to identify where it's coming from. It's just you're sort of chasing it.
Yes.
By the time you're chasing it, it's a lost cause.
Exactly.
And so what the full body scan does, it basically shows you a map of the whole body. It may show you while you're dealing with a cancer here that it came over from over there, and there you can see it. So you're not chasing it, you're really going back to it. So at the end of the day, that is, if you look at any number of things, I think, Grant Cardone works with a guy named Brandon Dawson. They have a company called 10X, which is also this incredibly comprehensive health center that they have in Arizona, where basically you go in, and whether it's hundreds of blood markers that you get or basically full body scans where you can identify what's going on in the body.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you were actually at the forefront by interviewing them, because a lot of people didn't know about that.
Yes.
And since you did that story, a lot of them are popping up, like Prenuva in New York.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many interesting things happening in the space, and as you said, a lot of Western medicine's approach is a band-aid. And I think that the key to longevity is, or one of the keys to longevity is really that preventative approach. Yeah. And so actually with Neko, what's very, very interesting is that they're not as comprehensive or invasive as Prenuvo, but for a reason. So they're meant to replace the annual physical, but to be 10x better than the annual physical. Right. And then, another interesting, slightly different thing that I did was I was invited by the Abu Dhabi Department of Health to cover their first kind of longevity conference and meet a lot of the scientists and founders and experts there. And what is happening also in the Middle East is incredible.
Tell me, describe.
There are the most brilliant, and they live all over, but they convened in Abu Dhabi.
Right.
Scientists who have figured out a new way to have early detection for pancreatic cancer. Right. People who have found ways to cure diabetes. There's just really amazing innovation happening and a lot of resources being invested. Right. And I recently came back from Saudi Arabia as well, because they had the first longevity and biohacking conference in.
So you're really adept at this field, because it's an amazing field. I'm a living example of it. A year ago in October, I was pretty much bed bound, still in this neck brace, really could not move, even though I did come to work every day. But my body was just not functioning. I was suffering from a lot of long COVID. And so as many people as those who poo-pooed the whole long COVID thing, trust me, it is a reality. And how it manifests itself is that COVID cells die, and they lay as senescent cells, as dead cells in our body. And when dead cells that are toxic lay in your body, they create cancer, they create inflammation, they create all kinds of toxic environments for the body to not thrive off of, but to die with. And so that, that was really, it was killing me. right? It was making for connective tissue disorders, any number of things, brain fog, all the things that people sort of do know as a problem that they had during COVID. I mean, there are stories, you know, when COVID happened, I was a part of a group called COVID Survivors on Facebook, which ended up to be 2.5-3 million strong.
Wow.
And people actually telling their real story, right? About they were 24 years old and they were marathon runners and they were, you know, in PhD programs and they were on the forefront of AI and all this stuff. And then they suddenly, their lives came to an end. They couldn't leave their bed. They couldn't think. There was no clarity. And they were basically slowly dying, as many of them did, right? We know how many people died, but how many people's lives have been changed by COVID in the long term. And I know now we don't think about it as much, but you're going to find that over the years, there are millions and millions of people, you know, who didn't die, but whose lives have been sort of really compromised in a big way. But I mean, that's a great story. It's so funny because, look, you know, one of the things about healthcare in the United States is, and one of the problems with the treatment of cancer is, there's not enough money in the cure of it. There's a lot more money in the treatment of it, right? And that, you know, it's a subject we don't tend to want to talk about because, you know, we may get shut down because of it, because, you know, Big Pharma doesn't like that story. But I've seen it firsthand. You know, that, you know, I would say that the treatment that my wife had probably contributed more to her death than the actual cancer, because we don't tend to, like, chemotherapy, you know, you carpet bomb the whole body. If you're not able to pinpoint where it's coming from, or you don't have a delivery system that really pinpoints where, and since then, I'm actually on the board of a company that's listed here called OS Therapies. It started as a treatment for cancer in dogs. Basically, what it does is it's a delivery system, so where you're able to pinpoint they treat you with it's an injection, and it basically travels through identifying which cells are sick, and then it kind of lasers those, as opposed to carpet bombing the whole body.
Amazing.
I mean, that would be the ideal thing when you're treating cancer, is not carpet bomb the whole body, but be able to identify and pinpoint the treatment, and that's probably what we're searching for, but it's taking really too long. If what you're describing, you know, obviously it's true, is that level of growth and futurism, you know, in longevity, in anti-aging. I've seen it firsthand, that I went from somebody who was really bedbound to basically, I mean, now I run 6 different companies. I have more energy. We're going to talk about it, but I have more energy than probably anybody on earth at this point. You know, that's potential capacity that you can still have in your life, being whatever age, right? And you can actually arrest aging. And have you done any interviews on those guys? Like, you know, there are a couple of the real crazy wild
like
biohackers.
Brian Johnson?
Yeah.
I know Brian Johnson. I haven't done a video on him, but he's very interesting. I have, but I just actually did a partnership with a life sciences company that is doing something really incredible with lipid nanoparticles that essentially can help combat diseases like MS and certain kinds of cancer, and hopefully potentially other things. You know, within the body, rather than, you know, removing things from the body, changing them and putting them in the body. So there's so much happening on the kind of science side, and that I'm very interested in. There's one of my most viral videos ever is a company called Toragem Biopharma out of Kyoto University in Japan. They have developed an antibody drug that can help regrow decaying teeth.
I saw that. I remember you did that.
So I think, you know, the biotech, the life sciences side, I'm very, very interested in.
I can see you being a doctor at some point.
I don't think so.
No.
I faint if I see blood.
Do you really? Oh my God.
But I do find it interesting to take these, you know, more scientific or technical stories and make them very easy to understand for the masses. I think that's something that is often missing.
And look, but you have a style. It's amazing. And look, tons of people have podcasts. It's sort of overdone in a way. And many people are attempting to tell other people's stories. But you have this incredible way of just, you know, anyone, you've got to go check out Aija Mayrock's, you know, your page. No, because it's just, you know, you're incredibly consuming. You just get sucked into, you know, your style and the way you tell the story. And it just, I find it incredibly exciting. So let's go. Like, what was the most exciting one for you? I mean, obviously, you know, whether it's product or people. I mean, who are the most exciting people you've met?
I'm very excited for our video.
Oh, good.
I love people stories.
Yeah.
There was a guy in Japan that I did a video on who is the oldest app developer in the world. He's 92. Right. That was really, really interesting. I love the travel videos too. So like
Yeah.
going to Saudi Arabia, making videos there was super interesting. My Jews Around the World series I love.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to pick. It's like picking a kid.
Yeah, it is. And so, look, you know what? Look, at the end of the day, I think you're exciting, and I think you're breaking a lot of ground. I mean, you know, you're telling stories that are not being told, right? People tend to tell stories that are sort of more mainstream, or even, you know, look, they love to tell. I mean, like I deal with the news every day, right? And even within the market, they love to tell these sort of catastrophic stories, which you're not telling. You know, you're telling a story about things that are going to change our lives. What do you foresee as the thing that's going to change our lives the most in the near future?
I think the most obvious one is AI. I
Okay.
just don't know how yet, and I go between waking up and feeling very excited and feeling incredibly terrified about where we will go as humanity.
Tell me your fears on that, because when I started in that space, I didn't understand it. And my fear was, when I speak to a lot of younger people, relative to trading or relative to like their careers, about like graduating high school and graduating college, like they're scared to death that there won't be any jobs for them.
Yes.
Right? That was what, and I kind of thought, okay, wow, AI is going to outsource everybody's, you know, there won't be a need for humans as much, right?
Yes.
And then I started working with this guy named Dan Ives, who's a #1 tech analyst in the world.
Yeah.
He's sort of the guy who picked NVIDIA at $83 when no one else thought it was a real company, and he's rode it all the way through, and he just issued a ETF which is all AI driven, and he and I do a podcast called Einstein and Ives, and we talk about AI. We talk about you know, the pros and the cons and what the future looks like, and the amount of money and the trillions that is being put into it. And so I was told by him, who I really consider one of the brightest guys in the space, that you know what, at the end of the day, our lives are going to be made so much better because of AI. Yes, are some of the jobs going to be outsourced a little bit? Yes, perhaps. But then what you do is you end up, you know, studying about that space. But at the end of the day, how it's going to affect, you know, the medical field and so many other fields in a big way.
Yeah, I hope that's true. I'm trying to be optimistic. I mean, I think
it is scary.
It
no
is
question.
scary. Yeah, I think that what people need to be is malleable. You just have to have a malleable brain. It's how you are, right? You're like always having new ideas and new things that you want to try and tackle and expand your business and rebrand. And I think that's what I would say to young people today, is just be very malleable. Don't pick one career and think, I'm just going to do this for the rest of my life, because I don't think that will be the world that we will live in. Even for content creators, like I do see a world where there are no more content creators that are real humans.
Right.
So I think that it's just really important to be as malleable as possible. Yes, I think there will be a lot of jobs that are, you know, no longer, there's no longer a use for human beings, but I think then there will be more made, hopefully, that will also be extremely beneficial. And I'm trying to lean on the side of optimism. So
as am I. I'm forever.
knows?
I'm a forever the cup half full person. I interviewed a lady recently who was about to go on and do a TED talk about as humans, what our ultimate truth is going to be. So she was speaking to her dad, and her dad was seeing a therapist, and suddenly she noticed that the bills to the therapist weren't going out anymore, and so she called him and said, "Did you stop seeing the therapist?" And he said, "Well, you know, I've gone on ChatGPT, and I'm now asking my advice from ChatGPT for." And she said, "What are you talking about? Well, like, why would you do that when you can actually talk to another human being about things? Why are you looking?" And it kind of opened her eyes, and it kind of opened my eyes to the fact, at what point is where is our real truth going to be when the next generation is actually, as opposed to, think about how, I'm sure you work really in depth with social media, right? And we've already seen, look, you're about to embark on an app that involves AI in a big way. And so how we have disengaged from other human beings in a way. We can sit in the back of a party even with our phone and feel like comfortable, because it's almost like we're with another person. And now how we can hide and be anybody we want behind that cloak, in a way. And that once we start asking advice from a machine, then it starts to get a little bit scary, right? Or is there going to be a generation that does not know what it's like to go to a doctor and speak to that doctor as a human, to go to a therapist and speak to them and ask advice? Are you ever going to get to the point where I'm not going to ask my parents, like, you know, birds and the bees? I don't know what it's going to be, but and that I'm getting all of my information from a bot. And that where then will be my truth. And that was it kind of opened my eyes to, like, you know what, there are going to be a couple of generations down the road that are going to know nothing about, like now, like there are not that many generations who were around who grew up before technology, who grew up before cell phones, who grew up before the internet. right? And how, so the farther away you are from that, you know, I mean, I'm not that old, but
Yeah.
you know, I grew up and there were only 6, 7 TV stations,
Wow.
you know, and then the antenna, wow. You say, well, like it's, whoa, that's like the Flintstones.
But I didn't grow up without technology.
Right, no, you didn't.
Yeah.
Right, you didn't at
Yeah.
all. And that, you know, look, I always joke about it. There's like the Flintstones and the Jetsons.
Yeah.
Right, those are the two worlds. Right,
Yeah.
there's the old prehistoric days,
Yeah.
which are the days of, you know, a landline
Yeah.
and a telephone. When I started working on Wall Street as clerks, we used to stand in front of those old black phones, and there would be the buttons you'd push, and I would have 100 different lines that I would connect to, and I was just screaming and yelling on that phone. And then if I wanted to get information out to my clerk out in the crowd, I had to scream squad, and the guy came running over, grabbed the paper, and went out there. We didn't have cell phones on the floor. We did, you know, what it has done is it's obviously opened up that line of communication,
Yes.
and it's made it really fast.
Yeah.
But there's going to be end up being a downside
Yeah.
to all of that stuff, and it's kind of weird.
I think I see a world where it can complement. So I've used ChatGPT for therapy, just experimenting with it.
Oh, you have? Okay.
And it's incredible, actually.
Really?
But it tends to err on your side,
Okay,
right? And like
right.
kind of default that you're the right one.
Right.
I think I see a world where
Does it know you're asking it about yourself?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It does. Okay.
I think
I've
it's-
actually never.
You have to try
I've
it.
never
It's
tried it.
unbelievable.
Okay.
But I think I see a world where a lot of this technology can be used to just make services more affordable,
Right. Okay.
and more
that makes
accessible.
sense. Yep.
So, for example, when it comes to healthcare, I think where AI can be incredible is like so much of the cost that we pay when we go to a doctor is around like administrative costs,
Yep.
right? It's not
Yep.
actually that time with the doctor, and that one-on-one time is like shaved down. So I think that like if kind of the back end and the administrative stuff can be replaced with
Yeah,
AI,
that makes sense.
We have more quality time with the doctor. Of course, there are also like the sides where there would be, you know, potentially a generation that doesn't have as much human contact. And I
Right.
think that is frightening, and I think nothing can replace humans. But when I look at it in terms of like scaling, you know, the healthcare system to be more affordable and accessible, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there.
So look, it turns out we didn't mean to go down that road. We were obviously talking a lot about healthcare, and we're
Yeah.
talking about one-on-one interrelationships between humans. That's
Yes.
sort of been, for me, that's what's exciting, and it seems to me that was what attracted me to you, because it seems like for you, that's the most exciting
Yes.
thing. At the end of the day, what you can accomplish and learn from, and that sort of excitement, it's like an energy that you have,
Yeah.
and what two people have, we seem to have it.
Totally.
You know, when you speak to someone else and they're on that same wavelength,
Yeah.
right? They're, you know, and you know, like you're an old soul in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, and that's exciting. Can we talk about the app a little, or is it
Next
off
time I
limits?
come, we will.
Okay, fine. All
Yes.
right, then we're not. Yeah, stay tuned for that. Anyway, I am so happy we got to do this. This has been 5 years in the making. You know what? Look, if you want to go out there and learn stories about like everything that's happening, right? It's amazing how you've gone. You know, in these few years that you've done this, you've really covered so much turf, like globally and you know, and visually, and also with people and stories, you know, and content and founders.
Thank you.
Because at the end of the day, it's just a matter of, you know, if you're going to go down any kind of a rabbit hole, you might as well go down Aija Mayrock. It is for me when I'm sort of sitting at home looking at, I'll just hit you and I'll go back over these stories because for me they're incredibly exciting. So I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
you came.
I'm so glad to meet
This
you.
is so exciting. So listen, you want to know stories about humans, you want to know stories about everything that's going to be exciting to you. That's what we're talking about. The humanist story, that one-on-one experience that you just can't find out there. Come check out Aija Mayrock, her page, check out Trade Like Einstein, Money News Network, check out the Einstein on Wall Street. It's here is where you got to go to learn all that stuff. One person at a time. That's all I got to say about